ownership. It should be home first, super second. The recent Retirement Income Review highlighted how critical home ownership was for retirement. It mentioned the importance of home ownership 300 times. Research from the Grattan Institute shows a typical homeowner aged over 65 spends just 5% of their income on housing, compared to nearly 30% for renters and rising. Until the 1990s, it was conventional practice that Australians save for a home deposit first because it was the ultimate form of financial security for them and their families throughout people's working life and their retirement. Saving for retirement income then followed. Many corporates didn't even compel young workers to contribute to their superannuation until about the age of 30, knowing they needed to save for a home. They understood that decisions had to be made to fit into the slipstream of people's lives. You get the benefits of home ownership for around 50 years when you're working and in retirement. Super is only for retirement. Compulsory superannuation reversed these priorities. It introduced a form of social engineering. Former Prime Minister Paul Keating articulated best in his 2007 speech on the history of modern superannuation. Keating said, "Had employers not paid the 9 percentage point of wages as superannuation contribution to employee superannuation accounts, they would have paid it in cash as wages. And, of course, they could have used it for a home deposit." Australians' wages were taken from them for super first and any savings for a home second. The legacy has been a significant accumulation of wealth in superannuation and a decline in home ownership in our great country. In 1992, the Australian superannuation system held $221 billion. Today, it is $3.1 trillion, an increase of almost 14 times. Concurrently, the biggest decline has been in the home ownership rate of those who have always been under compulsory super. Australian Bureau of Statistics data shows home ownership for Australians between 25 and 34 has gone from 52.2% in 1995-96 to 36.8% by 2017-18. The challenge becomes so serious that the Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute have projected that only half of Australians between 25 and 55 will own their own home by 2040. The biggest barrier for young Australians buying their own home is saving a deposit. And with the price of homes increasing by $23,000 a year on average since 2000, enabling them to buy a home earlier also means buying a home cheaper. The longer it takes to buy a home, the more expensive it becomes. Since 2000, the price of a home has increased, as I said, by $23,000. Demand influences house prices, but so does delay. Sadly, these points seem to be lost on the Labor Party and the self-interested superannuation sector who will say anything to get more of your money. They only want more access to rivers of gold. The response from the super industry and their ecosystem of representative bodies has been fierce, but they're absolute hypocrites. Super funds invest in build-to-rent housing. That means super funds are taking your superannuation to build housing that they own that you can rent from them. In June, Australian Super took a 25% stake in a build-to-rent company. Other super funds are now following suit. In August of this year, First State Super said they want to expand their investments in this build-to-rent sector and see the barriers removed to make way for the market to grow. The industry doesn't mind the superannuation savings of Australians being used for housing so long as they own it, not you. They're the modern equivalent of wannabe feudal lords. Ultimately, this debate is absolutely about power. Home ownership is about empowering Australians and families, and we can empower individuals and families through that process, or we can empower fund managers. And I know whose side I am on, and I know whose side the coalition government is on, and soon we will see who the Labor Party's side is on. Individuals, Australians and families, or super fund managers. Currently, the law says super first, home second. It should be the other way around. Home first, super second. If young Australians could own their own home, they'd have a better life, but an even better retirement. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for Goldstein. Is there a seconder for your motion? Sorry. Do we have a seconder?
Very happy to second this compelling